This week on Fox 26 Crime Files, we are going to talk about a very hot subject here in Houston, Tren De Aragua. This is a Venezuelan street gang who has infiltrated Houston. We are seeing more and more cases pop up. I've been doing plenty of reports surrounding this gang, and the gang members are known for very violent and egregious tactics. And we will be speaking with an expert today. I am bringing in Johan Obdola. So Johan is a Venezuelan Canadian citizen whose journey to Canada as a refugee has shaped his remarkable career. He's an expert in counterterrorism, counter-narco-terrorism, and transnational crime. He founded IOSI Global, an international nonprofit dedicated to combating organized crime and fostering global security. Johan, thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Abigail. Glad to be here.
And so tell me a little bit about your background and why you know so much about Tren De Aragua or TDA.
Yeah, well, back in before this called the Venezuelan Revolution, I was in Venezuela, chief of counter-narcotics for some part of the nation. I was very successful, and then in 1996, I had to leave the nation, the country, Venezuela, as a refugee, because I was already suffering some attempt against my life, the drug cartel from Colombia, and the Cartel del Sol, which is a cartel that is part of the Venezuelan regime. So they killed some of the police officers and military officers who worked under my order.
Wow. And so was that a government position that you had?
Yes, it was a government position. And before I left the nation, I left Venezuela, I talked in the National Congress then, and I made a very strong warning about what was to come. I mean, at that time, the Colombian drug cartels were really aggressively entering the country.
Wow. So you really have firsthand experience with organized crime and actually being targeted by organized criminals.
Yeah, not only Venezuela, then, eventually I've been involved all over the world, not only on transnational crime, but also counterterrorism and narco-terrorism. Now, I've been focused on what the Venezuelan regime has been doing from the beginning, its association with, with terrorist groups, with failed regimes. And the most incredible thing for me has been, well, it's not at all a big surprise, but the aggressive way that they have been spreading all over the hemisphere, the Tren De Aragua, I am quite, very surprised about that.
Yeah, and TDA has really made its mark here in Houston. It was just earlier this year, already in 2025, Governor Greg Abbott says that 4 members of Tren De Aragua were arrested at the Texas-Mexico border. That was on New Year's Eve. And they were saying that these 4 members had identifying tattoos. And I was kind of wondering if you had any information regarding some of the identifying characteristics when we're looking at the mugshots of these guys. What comes to mind when it comes to identifying a TDA gang member?
Well, initially, they've been using like tattoos related to train, because the origin of the name Tren De Aragua, to soccer and to some other sports or whatever. And ones who has this tattoo are the oldest one. They've been changing the MO, the modus operandi, and now they are bringing even among all this large population of Venezuelan migrants, they are bringing people who are not really identified by any physical evidence or whatever, tattoos or whatever. So they learn very fast. And when I mentioned and when I said that I was very surprised, is how aggressive and how fast they be entering the United States. Recently, I went to Argentina. I met with the government there, or government officials. I went to Paraguay, Uruguay, and Brazil. and we talk about the action of the Tren de Aragua. I've been investigating as well, where it's already been solved in the police way and the investigation way, how the Tren de Aragua has been also, because they are part of the Venezuelan regime. It's a more complex structure. And the Tren de Aragua, they killed, uh, 2 years ago, they killed a lieutenant from the army, a Venezuelan lieutenant in Chile,
Oh,
Lieutenant
wow.
Ojeda. Yet because Lieutenant Ojeda was one of the people who were very active opposing the Venezuelan regime. So it's very well said they killed this person in that was the first time in publicly that the Tren de Aragua, under the command of Alexander Granco. Alexander Granco is a colonel from the military counterintelligence from Venezuela, from the regime. He's the one in charge of all operation between terrorists and criminal organization, the nexus that they have with the Venezuelan regime in the hemisphere, Alexander Granco. So after that, there was several kidnappings of opposition leaders from the ELN from Colombia, the FARC from Colombia, and they work along with the Tren de Aragua. So we have been investigating what might be the scenarios for the United States, having Texas as mostly the entry door for these criminals who are, anyways, getting along or entering by the porous or whatever lack of effective program to control the border in the U.S. and the southern border.
Yeah, and you say that they spread so quickly. So it was last year that someone named Jorgens Robertson Kova was arrested. We reported that he was arrested in October, accused of coming here to Houston and trying to recruit middle school students at the school to come and join the TDA gang. Is that something that we've been seeing them, targeting young kids to recruit?
Actually, yes. The Tren de Aragua, they've been putting together every kind of scenarios that are going to be putting or activating in the States. It's been already testing in Colombia, in Mexico, and of course, initially in Venezuela. They've
Right.
been trained kids and young kids who are leaving the country along with all these migrants or even with their families. Yeah, I'm talking about 11 years old kids up to 16, 17 years old, and they have even a structure. In New York, it's called the New York police. They identify some of this kids group of the evil. Uh, it's like a bunch of kids who target jewelry store or whatever store, and they identified that they were part of the Tren de Aragua. Then you had the piranhas. The piranhas are a group of kids that they attack tourists or people on the street at once. 10, 15 kids, attacking and robbing the people at once. And then you have the sicarios. Sicarios are hit boys or young kids who commit crimes, and I'm telling you the brutal crimes where they even have dismembered bodies of their victims and so on. I'm talking about kids who have been doing that in Venezuela, and there has been some cases in Colombia and Mexico as well. So
Wow.
some of the modus operandi that these guys are really going to be somehow bringing into the United States.
So you're saying that TDA in Venezuela and Colombia would recruit children to murder people?
Yes, and what
Wow.
they are because this is something. This is a nexus. This is a very very important nexus. And the time that we are facing since a few years ago, the Tren de Aragua was in 2016. They arrived to around a little bit maybe before to Peru, and they changed the whole scenario of crime. The Peruvian law enforcement agency, they were really overwhelmed about it. I mean, they didn't have any experience. The same happened in Chile. The same happened in Colombia as well. In Mexico, they are even fighting drug cartels in Mexico City as well. They have even recently killed one of the border agents, the Mexican border agents. But this is absolutely nothing because we know for a fact that they have since 2000, let's say since 2019, the Venezuelan regime started establishing and creating alliances with the Tren De Aragua and to bring chaos, violent crimes into the United States. And this is not just a saying. This is a factual reality. And what we are looking is every day what is happening, what is the media is registering, what law enforcement are indicating about the crimes committed there, because we are expecting this year, 2025, it will be absolutely very sensitive and very urgent, because one of the things that the Tren de Aragua is bringing to the whole hemisphere, including the United States and eventually even Canada, is the level of violence. That's what every nation in Latin America is saying. We are in shock for the level of violence that these people are showing.
They do seem very egregious. And another case here in Houston that speaks to that is one that went national, the case of the killing of 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungary. She was found in a ditch, her hands, her ankles bound. She was sexually assaulted and then strangled. And it is reported that the two men accused of doing that to Jocelyn are Tren De Aragua gang members. And so I think that's just, a clear example of the kind of violence that you're speaking of. And is this something that is right in line with the nature of the gang?
Yes, absolutely. That's again one of the things that they are going to be showing eventually, because it hasn't really happened in that dimension that we are projecting, is that they will be bringing to the major cities or whatever across the United States a level of crime, violence, homicide, but in a different way. And that will be part not only of their own interests. They are interested. Their businesses, drugs, sexual, illegal activities, and so on, money, even money laundering. But what they are going to be looking is, including in coordination with the Venezuelan regime, is to intensify the level of violence, creating social chaos in most cities across the United States, and that will start happening this year with across the states.
So you're saying their main motive, even beside, making money and, dealing narcotics, that kind of thing, is to create social chaos. Why is that?
Well, the trend that I was established, initially the Venezuelan regime tried to control them when they were in jail in Tocoron, in Aragua. Once they start operating across Venezuela and expanding, the Venezuelan regime started establishing, created some kind of communication with them. At the same time, the Venezuelan regime has been providing IDs and facilities, even a little bit of money for years, to hardcore criminals in Venezuelan jails who have been then moved to Latin American nations. That has been a process that is along with whatever the Venezuelan regime is doing with Iran, the Quds, and Hezbollah, or whatever. So the criminal component is a very important tool for the Venezuelan regime's strategy against the United States. So the Tren De Aragua, they fix into that. They agree with that. I was surprised, and then we did some investigation, because recently some of the members of the Tren De Aragua mentioned that they will take Nicolas Maduro. They will get the guy, and they will get the rewards that the United States has been offering for the capture. That was a kind of joke, anyways. So the Tren De Aragua is a very important component, and it's not a theory. It's been proven of part of the structure of the Venezuelan regime operation in the Americas.
Right. And what do you feel like people need to know, here in the United States, in Texas, and anywhere where this gang is popping up?
Well, I believe in Texas already the government there is already established on a special task force to deal with that. It is quite important for them to establish not only intelligence sharing across the nation, but also across other countries from Latin America. That's the only way. One thing that is important is, and it's going to be very sensitive, very urgent to deal with. The Tren De Aragua, they have already, I saw some numbers, but with the numbers that we have, that they may have within the United States is over 6,000 people, way
6,000
over
members?
6,000 people, members. Yes. And they are going to be, if you add that number, and they are hardcore criminals, they are Venezuelans. And then they will be recruiting as well within the United States. So right now, the sharing information, I know this will create some kind of a situation with the immigrant population, mostly from Venezuela, but realistically, the situation is very dire. I mean, it's really important that the action that the government of Governor Abbott is taking in Texas, but as well, it's very important that other law enforcement in other states and the federal level will be taken regarding the Tren De Aragua, because this is I was very kind of not relieved, but when the Governor Abbott mentioned that declared them as a terrorist entity, I was very glad, because they are a terrorist criminal entity, a very hardcore. And this is something that is new into the criminal component within the United States. We are talking about people who don't have any regards for human life. If you see the Mexican drug cartels, the brutality and killings, that's really nothing compared to the level of violence that these criminals will bring and are bringing into the United States.
And to that
So
point,
alert is, yeah. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
no, you're fine. To that point of the violence, what is a good example that you have? Do you have a specific case that comes to mind when you think about how violent this gang is?
Well, I have some cases in Venezuela. We've been identifying a lot of cases that have been happening way before, where they've been kidnapping people for money, of course, for ransom, and even they pay or not, they kill the people. We have even information regarding and kids that been trained to kill and dismember bodies for them to lose that kind of humanity. And all these kids, most of these people or criminals, they are being specifically trained to be brought to the United States, and they have been doing that already. They already have been bringing this specific group of people, hardcore criminals, not only minors but also adults, into the state. Once in the states, then within some time lack of maybe organization from them, but it's happening. It's happening, and it's very, very. The community has to be highly alert about what's happening there. We are expecting really bad news for this year.
Yeah, and you have brought that up a couple of times. You say that heading into 2025, we expect this problem to only grow. Why is that?
Because the arrival of President Trump, of course, is an obvious situation, geopolitical situation with Venezuela. We are going to be seeing an escalation regarding the operation of Venezuelan from Venezuela, of Hezbollah, Hamas, Iran, the Quds as well, all over the hemisphere. Of course, that depends on the current and emerging situation of global geopolitics. But we know there's a lot of planning already. A couple of days ago, Nicolas Maduro said that, it was like a joke, that they will be invading, military invading with Brazil, Puerto Rico to be free from the States. That kind of stupid game, let's say, but it has a purpose. So right now we don't know. We know, and we're still looking how the Tren de Aragua is going to be. We are trying to make the projection within the United States, and then behind the Tren de Aragua is the Tren del Llano. It's called Tren del Llano. It's the second most powerful from Venezuela, who are already in the United States. There hasn't been any news about them yet. We are investigating that, but there will be the two most important Venezuelan criminal groups operating across the United States.
Right. Well, Johan, we are coming up on time here. I want to thank you so much for joining us and speaking about this topic. It's one that continues to grow and continues to concern everyone here in Houston.
Thank you, Abigail. It's my pleasure. Thank you so much.